everyone, welcome back to Online Classroom Cikgu. In this video, we are going to look at the third subtopic of Chapter 2, that is the interdependence and interaction among organisms and also between organisms and environment. And because this topic is a little long, so Cikgu is going to do two parts of the video. In this video, we are going to look at the first topic, that is the habitat, species, population, community, and ecosystem. We are also going to look at some changes that might happen in ecosystem. So first of all, there are 5 very important terms that we need to understand. What are they? Let's look at them one by one. The first one is habitat. Habitat is very easy. What is habitat? Habitat is the natural home of an organism, meaning where does that living things live. For example, the natural habitat of a polar bear is in the North Pole. Secondly is species. What is species? Species is a group of organisms that have a common characteristics and that can reproduce to breed offsprings. In another word, it's a group of organisms that is very similar to each other and they can have baby. For example, this is the dragonfly species. How about population? Population is very similar to species. Why? Because population is a group of organisms of the same species that live in the same habitat. That means if you can find one group of living things of the same species, of the same home, same habitat, they are a population. Okay, for example, this is a population of dragonflies because they are all of the same species, and if all of them live in the same habitat, they are a population. How about a community? A community is a few population. Again, is the word that we have just learned. Just now is one population of dragonfly. How about if there are different organisms that live together in the same habitat and they all live in groups? They are all different types of populations but the same habitat and they have mutual interaction with each other. Then that is called a community. For example, here are a few populations that live in the same habitat. That is a pond. So this is a pond community because there is a population of tadpole, a population of dragonfly, a population of hyacinth, population of mosquito larvae, a population of snail, a population of fish and grass, and all of those populations live in a pond. And so this is a community. How about an ecosystem? Ecosystem is a few communities that live together in one habitat. Can you see the pattern here? Okay, but there's something very special about ecosystem. What is it? It includes the non-living components. Meaning, before this, the words that we have learned like species, population, community, they are living things. But for ecosystem, it includes the non-living components like the water, the air, the soil, the sunlight, and so on. So, an example will be a whole pond ecosystem. So over here you have a whole community of different populations, and you also include the water, the soil, the air, the sunlight. So this whole thing, include the non-living things, is called a whole one ecosystem of the pond. So can you remember all these terms? Let's have a very quick revision. So first we learn about species, meaning the organism that have the same or common characteristic and they can produce babies. For example, dragonfly. And a few dragonfly that lives together is called a population of dragonflies. Okay, when the organism of the same species, there's a group of them that live in the same habitat. And then when there are different populations live in the same habitat, we call that a community. And then when there's different communities live in the same habitat, and this time we include the non-living things, and we call that an ecosystem. Alright? That's clear, right? Next, let's look at a balanced ecosystem. What is a balanced ecosystem? We have to understand that the living things that is in an ecosystem, the organisms, they are interdependent, and they're interdependent on each other. They need each other. They depend on each other. Not only that, they also are interdependent on the non-living things like the water, the light, the air, and the soil. When all of this exists in harmony, then one balanced ecosystem is formed. So there's a whole balanced ecosystem when the organism in there depend on each other, depend on the non-living components, and they exist in harmony. So that is called a balanced ecosystem. And living things need to adapt to different environment. For example, in the tropical, the organism there, the animal and the plant there will need to be able to live in a place where there's a lot of rainfall and sunlight throughout the year. How about the organism that live in desert? They will need to be able to endure extreme hot and dry weather. And for organisms that live in the tundra, they will need to be able to endure long winters and short summers. There are a few factors that can influence the population size. Remember population? A few species that live together in one ecosystem. What are those factors? Number one is disease. Disease can actually cause a population to decrease, the size of a population to decrease. For example, bird flu, avian flu, will cause the population of the chicken that is in the rearing areas to decrease. Another example will be tobacco. This is a very blurred picture, I apologize for that. But the tobacco mosaic virus is a type of virus that can infest the crops, and that will also influence the population size of tobacco. Next, the presence of predators can also influence the population size of another species. For example, predators means the enemy that eat that organism. We will learn more about predators in the next video. The size of zebra population will be affected if there is suddenly the presence of the population of lion. Next, another factor will be the source of food. For example, panda eats bamboo. If the bamboo population decrease, then panda population will also be affected and will also decrease because the source of food become so limited. Next, one phenomenon in Malaysia is that the crow population has increased because there is abundance of food scraps, meaning we are not very responsible where we leave food scrap on the street or around us, and that has caused a problem, which is the increase of crow population. The change of weather can also change the population size. For example, droughts. When it becomes very dry and no rain, and the soil can become dry and infertile. Infertile means that cannot grow anything. It's very difficult to grow a plant. So that will increase the risk of forest fire, and of course it will decrease the population of plants and animals. How about changes in ecosystem? Just now we look at the change of the population size. And the change of the whole ecosystem, we are looking at a bigger scale. Well, one change is migration. Migration happens when one animal moves from one place to another place because of the change of season. And this is very good example in Malaysia will be the cattle egret. They normally migrate to Kuala Gula, Perak around the time of September to April every year. And what does this migration bring? It brings some changes in the ecosystem. Why? Because the cattle egret actually eats the insects, and when they come to Kuala Gula, Perak, what happens is the number of insects, the population of the insects has decreased, and that will change the ecosystem in that place. Next will be the limited water supply. For example, in paddy plant is a type of plant that needs a lot of water. If there happen to be a long drought season, what happens is that balance of ecosystem is upset. Why? Because paddy plant will die. It becomes smaller or it becomes less. And what happens is the food web is affected because paddy plant is actually the producer. Remember the word producer? Producer refers to green plants that can make their own food. Finally, the change in population, which we have just talked about. Why will that bring changes in ecosystem? Because when the population of one organism change, the size of one organism, the size of one population change, it always also change the size of another population. For example, when there is an increase in the population size of pests, it will also cause the population of plants to decrease because the pests will eat the plants. For example, the caterpillar will eat the plants. Well, that's all from Cikgu in this video. I will see you in part 2 in the next video. Don't forget to watch that, okay? Bye! If you have learned something new from this video, don't forget to like and subscribe.